Hi, I'm Chef Alex Askew, president of BCA Global. I want to welcome you to another episode of Stirring the Pot in 10 minutes or less, conversations around food, race, and social justice. We have a very special guest today, Mr. Bren Smith. And Bren is a GreenWave co-executive director, owner of Thimble Island Ocean Farm, pioneered the development of regenerative ocean farming. He's also a lifelong fisherman, the first one on our show, a commercial fisherman, and he's been named one of Rolling Stone magazine's 25 People Shaping the Future and featured in Time magazine's Best Inventions of 2017. He's also the winner of the Buckminster Fuller Prize and has been profiled by 60 Minutes, CNN, The New Yorker, Wall Street Journal, National Geographic, and elsewhere. Besides all of that, he's an Ashoka, Castanea, Echo and Green Climate Fellow, all fellowships, and James Beard Award-winning author of Eat Like a Fish, My Adventures, Farming the Ocean to Fight Climate Change. Welcome, Bren. So glad to have you on Stirring the Pot.
Yeah, honored to be here. Absolute honor. This will be fun.
Yeah, great. Well, great for taking out the time. We are kind of correlated by our Castanea. You're my Castanea brother, and I also consider you my white brother. People say, is he that cool? I say, absolutely. Let's get right into it. Give our audience, a sense of what your personal mission statement is.
Yeah. So, I'll tell you what I'm not, right? I'm not an environmentalist. I'm not a foodie, right? Like, I grew up in a place where there's seal hunts. I grew up as a commercial fisherman, dropped out of high school when I was 14, I'm a hunter by trade and how I grew up. And then, food I eat at the gas station most nights. Like, I used to fish for McDonald's. Like, I don't think of food as sort of this sacred thing. It's just not my tradition, right? But I think what I am is really like a piece of this new building climate movement, which is a big tent movement. It's just a movement of like indigenous communities, it's like food justice, climate, jobs. It's this whole big wide web of folks coming together. And it means that I don't have to care about food so much. I grow food, but I don't have to love to eat food, and I don't have to be a traditional environmentalist to be part of it. So I think my mission statement is really, how do we figure out how to create a regenerative economy that lifts up communities while draws down carbon, right? From a climate perspective.
There's a lot of conversation around land and land trust and farming, and there's a huge Black farming movement. Again, I think why it's really exciting to have you on Stirring the Pot is because you are taking a perspective from the waterways, which is often not included in those conversations, especially where food, race, and social justice lie. Could you tell our audience, why is it important that you integrate food, race, and social justice in your work? Yeah. And what are some of the unseen or unheard things that people really need to start contemplating, as your work is really part of the larger food system as well?
Absolutely. So, people forget that more of the U.S. territory is underwater than above, right? It's like a massive territory. And right now, our position is to build seawalls or flee the coast as climate change, as seas rise. And I look at that and I'm like, oh my God, seas are rising. That's more farmland, right? That's more places I can grow shellfish and seafood. Mm-hmm. So like many of us are out there trying to grow these regenerative crops underwater. The thing is that the question for us is, will that be the next white land grab, but out in the ocean? Mm. So I work extensively with a lot of indigenous fishermen, and they were the first ocean farmers on the planet. Were indigenous communities in the Pacific Northwest building clam walls. They had these clam farms, right? So they've been doing this for 5,000 years. And so suddenly I was a commercial fisherman, pillager, I become a seaweed farmer. I'm out there permitting grounds. Well, once again, here I am as a white guy taking lands, right? Like, this is the way we need to think about it. And instead, can we think of this ocean opportunity as a place where we can do massive reparations programs? So, for example, the Maori in New Zealand granted 10,000 hectares of ocean farming property, like in the water, for regenerative ocean farming as part of a reparations package. Mm. So we're working with indigenous communities in Alaska, like the tribe with Dune Lankard to do 2,000 acres of kelp forests for food security and restoration and revive their economy. And they should be in the front of the line in this. It shouldn't be me. Like, I'm trying to make a living on a living planet for sure, but we need to figure out who should be first, who should benefit from all this.
Right. Well, I told everyone you were a cool white brother, and I think you just kind of explained why. That is really cool that you can address not only the barriers around food race and social justice in terms of the waterways, but also, the impact that, the white counterparts need to acknowledge of how they can integrate understanding, their privilege and how they can actually form a bridge. And you mentioned reparations. I mean, no one really knows what that means, but it seems like you are actually forming an idea that makes sense, that's working, that's actionable, instead of just talking about it. And that's why, I enjoy a relationship with you, because you're a very action-oriented person. So I want to invite you to part 2, if you'll come back, Bren. And I just want to tell our audience, let me just give a little teaser. Bren is going to describe in detail. He's gonna paint a beautiful canvas. I'm gonna say, no pun intended, with watercolors, right? Of where he is and what it looks like and what it smells like. And we invite everyone in the audience to come back to part 2. Bren Smith, GreenWave co-executive director, Stirring the Pot with BCA Global. We'll be right back with part 2. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Chef Alex Askew, and welcome back to part 2 of Stirring the Pot, video podcasts, conversations around food, race, and social justice. Our special guest is Bren Smith, co-executive director of GreenWave, and owner of Thimble Island Ocean Farm. Thank you so much for coming back, Bren. Really appreciate it. You speak truth to power. Could you give our audience some idea, in a vivid way, of what it looks like, smells like, where your work, is performed? I have a cue, but I want our audience to get a sense of your experience, because every time you describe it to me, I'm transcended there. Can you paint that picture for our audience?
Sure, I'll give it a try. So I work, out on a 10-acre farm in the water, right? And it's underwater. You go out and you don't see a thing, basically, just a couple buoys, because all of the growth is underwater. It's, seaweeds and shellfish. You've got things growing in the bottom vertically on ropes. And I go out early in the morning, and, all I've ever wanted to be was someone who works out in the ocean. And the question is why? Like, I always wanted to be a fisherman, and it's because you have a self-directed life. You succeed and fail on your own terms. You have this pride of feeding your country. And like, I'm going to die on my boat one day. That's like the metric of success for me. Right. So I'm out there, and I'm out there in the winter. It's winter now. I'm out there, breaking ice off the gunnels and things like that. And, I'll never be rich, but God, I don't have a boss, and I get to dictate the terms of my own life. So I'm free.
Right. Now, how did COVID, over the last year? I mean, we read a lot of reports about how it affected this industry and farming and all kinds of things, but we don't really hear how it's affected and impacted your area specifically. How can you share with our audience how it did have an impact and the aha moments of how you maybe had to pivot?
Yeah. So, for us, COVID was interesting because, it's this moment of crisis, and we're all in this moment of crisis, and odd opportunities come out of crises, right? And it's a very uncomfortable feeling for all of us. So actually, like, some really great things came out of it, in that we couldn't process our seaweeds indoors because it was shut down. We were right at the height of harvest season, pulling out hundreds of thousands of pounds out of the water. So suddenly, instead of indoors, we found tobacco barns here in my area. a farm from the 1600s that had been growing tobacco, had been shut down because of, the end of the tobacco industry. And turns out kelp looks like tobacco. Like kelp is the new tobacco. It acts like it, it dries it. So it dries like it. So we used that for our infrastructure and drove down processing costs 90%.
Wow.
And so now we're always going to use tobacco barns, and these great old tobacco farmers now have, a new source of income. So that's the kind of pivot. But it opens up this big question for me of like crisis politics. Like, listen, we're in a health crisis with COVID, we're in an economic crisis, we're in a social justice crisis, on and on and on. But within those crises, these moments open where we can step in and give our solutions. Right? And that's what I think these opportunities and conversations about, is like, we are poised to put our models in these when everyone else is confused and lost, right? When the leadership and the folks who have sort of injustice imprinted in their DNA, you can go in there and sort of write a new script.
Wow, that's very powerful. In terms of, kind of helping our audience understand, and again, we're not going to be able to give anyone a doctorate degree in a few minutes, especially in under 10 minutes, but we can give them some nuggets of things that could be thought provoking, and really try to move them to have a more deeper sense of awareness. Two questions. One is what would you advise people that really need to better understand with awareness the whole topic of water, the food sourcing that comes from that, and as specific as even when they go to a supermarket, how they could make a difference in their purchasing decisions. And part two to that is, what would you recommend as your secret sauce for people to integrate that information as soon as possible?
Yeah. So, as far as purchasing, I think climate change is just completely changing the game. It's pushing our food system out to sea, like drought, with freshwater shortage, wildfires, all these things. It's being pushed out. But our wild fisheries can't bear that burden, because 90% of fish are unsustainably caught or overfished at this point. So the question is, where are we going to get all this food from? And we believe it's from ocean farming, particular types of ocean farming. And so I think as a purchaser, if you want to buy seafood, buy things that don't swim away and you don't have to feed. So think of that, right? You buy an oyster, a clam, a mussel. You haven't had to feed that. It hasn't required any fertilizer. Hasn't required any land. It doesn't require fish pens. None of this stuff. It's this beautiful creature that is high protein, but has got a lower carbon footprint than lentils. So pick up that shellfish. Pick up that weird stuff called seaweed, right? That is eaten all over the world, but we can grow it here locally and turn that into this, it's the culinary equivalent of the electric car. It soaks up 20 times more carbon than land-based plants, right? So every time you eat these things, you're part of the climate solution, but not just the climate. You're also creating jobs. You're creating a food system out in the ocean, which is new. Like, the ocean's a blank slate. We can create something beautiful there. Take all those lessons from land-based injustice, industrial farming, and let's build something different. Let's do food right out in the ocean. I think that's why we're so excited to do it. It's not just about growing these things, but let's build a system that we can be proud of and that we can look to as one of the great examples of what humans can do with a food system.
Right. Well, that's spot on. And that really gives some incredibly powerful perspective, because, there is this whole, the world is mostly covered by water, right? And, not to consider the impacts, of the food sourcing. And what you just really kind of outlined is that, there's not only a climate change, a carbon footprint, there's also nutritional value as well that, people don't understand. We're talking about, in general, low fat, high protein food sourcing, right? And, the seaweed is another very dense nutrient based product that actually is used in a lot of culinary medicine already. So definitely something that we can incorporate, and also incorporate in our program, Mindful Eating for the Beloved Community, which is core construct of really just being aware of what your options are. And the more we expand our options and the knowledge base of that, the more we have more empowered choices. And then now we can actually come together in a collective, so to speak, and make the changes that are needed.
Exactly. I mean, there are 10,000 edible plants in the ocean. I'll
10,000.
figure out how to grow them. I don't want to eat them, but you guys figure out how to cook them and make them delicious, right? I'll grow those 10,000, and we'll make this new climate cuisine together that I think is like not being force-fed bugs. It can be just delicious and gorgeous and actually breathe life back into the oceans. That's what I'm hoping.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Bren, for being part of Stirring the Pot, BCA Global's conversations around food, race, and social justice. You have given us incredible perspective on your area of just the whole water, the whole water system, food sourcing. I mean, this is definitely going to be one of our particular favorite video podcasts. And thank you so much for your time. I know you're a very, very busy person. I'm also looking forward to possibly working with you in the future. I think we get along very well in terms of getting things done, and kind of moving past the conversation to a theory of action. Right.
Yeah, right. Alex, you're a hero of mine, and I'd be honored, and it's just a highlight to be on here. So thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. And stay tuned for more episodes of Stirring the Pot, conversations around food, race, and social justice with BCA Global. This is Chef Alex Askew and Bren Smith. And Bren, how can people support your organization?
If you go to greenwave.org, you just step into our whole ocean world.
Okay. GreenWave.org. Everyone, make sure you look it up and support any way you can. This is Alex Askew, Chef Alex Askew, signing off for now. See you next time on Stirring the Pot, conversations around food, race, and social justice. Goodbye for now.